Hello and welcome to Bible Society's Facebook Live. My name is Hazel Southam. I'm the project manager of the Psalm 23 garden at the RHS Chelsea Flower Show, and I am delighted to welcome this morning Sarah Eberle.
Hello.
We hope that the weather isn't too terrible where you are. Mercifully, behind us there is a little bit of sunshine, and I hope that you are all okay and safe and dry wherever you are. This morning we're going to be chatting about the garden at the Chelsea Flower Show, taking you behind the scenes to discover things that you just simply wouldn't know without half an hour in the inestimable presence of Sarah Eberle. This garden is themed on Psalm 23, and it's a psalm that talks about God being with us in every moment of life, and that seems to be kind of just as relevant now, doesn't it, with Storm Jorge blowing through, with people's houses being flooded, and with real worries about the coronavirus, as it was when it was written 3,000 years ago. So hang on to that thought. This isn't going to work without you, however. So whatever you're doing, sitting on the sofa, having a cup of coffee, send us in your questions. We would love to hear your questions about garden design, about this particular garden, and about the Chelsea Flower Show. We don't really want questions about why your petunia isn't growing, or how to clean your greenhouse effectively. If that's okay, we're not the right people to ask those particular things. So send us in your questions, and Ryan, who is behind the camera, will pass them around to us as we go on. So looking forward to hearing your questions. So Sarah, we've been chatting about this garden for 18 months. We first started talking about it over a cup of tea. What was it that made you decide that this was something you wanted to do?
Well, surprisingly, I really wanted to take a break for a year from Chelsea, because I think a lot of people know that I've been doing Chelsea almost every year for, I think it's 6 years now. And I thought it was time for a break. It's quite time. But I thought it would be good to come and be polite and to talk to you. And then when I saw your brief and looked again at Psalm 23, I was just captivated, because I just see such an analogy with my relationship with what I do and landscape. And there's so much a sense of spirituality in what I do. It's a modern thing maybe, but we all know that gardening and getting close to nature is good for mental well-being and physical health. And in that sense, for me, it's always been very spiritual. So I could see this immediate connection, and I was just so excited. I just didn't possibly say no.
I'm glad you didn't say no. Very, very glad.
So am I, actually.
It's a psalm that speaks. It's also a psalm that's very visual, isn't it? It's got green pastures and still waters. When people see the garden, how will they see those things translated?
Well, what I'm trying to achieve is actually very hard, because I need to impart a sense of that spirit through the garden. So it actually takes people about maybe 10 seconds to walk past the garden at Chelsea, and there's usually loads of people, so it's quite, you've got to be pretty motivated to get in there. And in that time, you have to stop them, bring them in, and then engage with them, and they want to know more. And that's quite a hard thing to do, because you need to put motivation in there. So I'm trying to stop them with a sense of a pause, sense of breath, a sense of peaceful contemplation. And there are loads of people on the show site, lots of noise. It can be hot, it can be cold. We go through the whole weather syndrome. So actually doing that is really quite a challenge, and that's something that's really important to me about engaging people. It's something about this combined with the mind that really engages them with this spot. I've always said all the way along, it's a bit like if you go on a walk and you just come across this place that is so auspicious. It may be a tree that you want to sit on. It may be a rock next to a babbling brook that you just feel you have to sit down next to and spend a little while there, and to just pause. And that is the sense that I'm trying to create at Chelsea.
So it's the spirit of the psalm that you're trying to convey,
Absolutely. I think that's really important because, the psalm has a lot of allegories and images of landscape, but it's about a journey through life as well. And I think in terms of the human spirit and understanding that as you go through life, you have really troubled and difficult times, but the end destination, can be worthwhile, and that we take our peace when we can. Maybe, there are a lot of analogies you can put to it, which is good because everybody interprets something differently. You want everybody who visits the show to get a different kind of response.
Yes.
But some element of that sense of a real spiritual engagement or a sense of peace,
yes,
and a relationship with nature, I think, is the most important thing.
And that's what you're hoping people will take away from it.
Absolutely. And, it is we're lucky, in some ways it's a coincidence, but, for me, really, to a degree, nature is my church. It really, my spiritual core is engaged in the natural world. And so we're all aware, I think now increasingly with a much larger urban population, that it's really important that people engage with nature and maybe do some gardening or grow something on the windowsill or grow something to eat, or because it is really helpful for the human spirit, I think.
So whilst we're not being prescriptive at all about how people should respond, we know there will be emotional responses to it. What about you? What's your emotional response to the garden?
We will see. We will see. It's funny because you spend quite a long time, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, developing a garden for Chelsea. And it's always just slightly different from what you initially thought, not in massive detail, but the idea is that actually you're so familiar with it. It's a bit like writing a book. You start off with your main characters and your storyline, but you've got to kind of make it believable.
Yes.
And as you go on, you begin to flesh out all the details, make the characters rounded and real people, so that the reader is really engaged and believes everything that's going on. And it's the same with the garden. And in some ways, the writing of it is actually on the showground when you're building, because you see all the little detail you can build on, things that you hadn't considered. The serendipity, how does the light fall through the tree maybe at 7 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning? Those moments of serendipity are perhaps what draws me to doing Chelsea more than anything else. It's those wonder of working with nature, and you start with a few materials and then she takes over and does the rest for you.
Amazing. I know for myself, and I'm sure everybody watching loves watching Chelsea Flower Show on the telly. That's great. That's really relaxing. What's it like actually designing a garden and putting one together for the show? There must be a lot of hidden stresses that we don't see.
There are a lot of hidden stresses and there are a lot of unhidden stresses. There's no doubt, it's quite high pressure. Now, whether you call that stress or not, I'm the sort of personality, I like thinking on my feet, I like problem solving, and I like being challenged. So all of those things make it quite addictive for me. Some people find it much harder because you have to make decisions like that when you're at the showground. You have a finite period of time. And, it doesn't matter how well your planning goes, there are going to be some things that don't quite work out, particularly with the plant material. It's something that you relied on and always flowers at Chelsea time, and you've got 200 of, and you got to fill it full of them, they won't flower. There is always something, and you have to be able to think, okay, that's not the end of the world. Nobody else knows my vision.
Yes.
How can I now create that vision without being caught up in the negative side of that stress and decision making? So it requires a certain amount of mental discipline, and so talking to yourself. I'm forever sitting myself down and saying, don't panic, Sarah, there's always a solution. And you might not be aware of what that solution is now, but by the afternoon, solution will be there.
Yes.
And Chelsea's a huge family, actually. Everybody helps everybody else, because although you could say it's a competition because there are medals awarded, it's against the standard, not against each other. So everybody's so supportive, which is lovely.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be good. Now, you've won 17 gold medals thus far. We have a question in from a viewer, thank you for that, asking, are you aiming for a particular number?
No, I'm not aiming for a particular number, because I think once you start to chase the medals, you start making poor decisions, because you start trying to think as you perceive the judges will think. And if you do that, you're inevitably going to be wrong. So I always just try and make the garden the best garden I can make. In terms of decisions, there will always be a consideration of judging, because I'm a judge myself on occasions, obviously not at Chelsea. I can't judge the show that I exhibit at. That's quite fair and correct. But you are aware, all exhibitors are aware of the judging criteria. And so, for instance, if your planting isn't sustainable, in other words, if you put, say, an acid-loving plant next to a lime-loving plant,
right,
they're not going to grow together. So you will start losing points. So there are the really what I call professional points, that you need to make sure it would really work. The design ones, a bit more difficult. We'll all make our own decisions, and although it's judged objectively, everybody has a slightly different ring to it, is what they like to do, and the character and the story and everything else. So I just try and make it as the best I can make it, and hope for the best.
And with that in mind, can we take everybody behind the scenes now, and perhaps you could tell them what's happening with the Psalm 23 garden? What are the things behind the scenes that people won't know about?
Well, there's a lot going on. We've been growing plants since last autumn, beginning of late summer. So the plants are growing away. I've been doing sort of monthly inspections. Now spring is springy. I will be doing them more often, seeing how some plants are looking like they're going to perform, others are not. So I will be juggling with that. I am at the moment selecting my rock for the garden, which is not an easy thing. There's a certain character I have in mind, but I have to work with what's available and what's sustainable and all the rest of it. So it's all coming together. We're now dealing with all the technical information. You wouldn't believe the administration in terms of health and safety and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite a big job, but it's a big team. So the landscape contractor, Landform, full members of the team, as we all are. And so it's, although the highlight is always on the designer, it's actually a huge team of people who make this work.
Absolutely. So there's loads going on behind the scenes. It's a really busy, focused time, and yet it sounds as if there's quite a lot that inevitably is still in flux.
Absolutely, and that's par for course.
Yes.
But there is a time, despite 17 gold medals, there is a time when, usually about maybe a couple of weeks, when you're still trying to finalize things, because you don't want to rush into making decisions, because they've got to be right. But there is a time when the pressure of time adds to it. So, 6 weeks before, maybe you're like, oh, I'm already, have I thought of everything? And it starts to get a bit more stressful. A month, 3 weeks before is perhaps the most stressful, because you're like, oh, I haven't got time now. So have I got everything sorted? Once we get to site, day one, it's lovely. Once you can get there, it's like any problem.
Yes.
If you can call it a problem, actually thinking about it is worse than actually doing it. So once we're there, fine. But those few, 6 weeks to start date are always a little bit nerve-wracking.
Sleepless nights?
I try not to, but there are. It's that waking in the middle of the night thinking, oh, I've forgotten a tree or something. I haven't, I don't think.
No, I don't think you have.
But, you may suddenly find that actually your tree's been sold to somebody else because you've got to tag it or something. Don't worry.
No,
they're not.
That hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened. But there's usually something.
Yes.
Even if it's just your perceived. Did I do it? Did I do it? Didn't I do it? But it's nearly it's countdown, really.
It is countdown, absolutely. We've had some great questions in, so we're going to ask a few of those. This is a lovely one. Sarah, why did you become a garden designer? Was there anything else that you wanted to be as you were growing up?
Well, for a little while, I wanted to be an astronomer and an astronaut. So I'm still fascinated with things to do with, space and everything out there. I think because I'm a creative, and so I really enjoy this, the unknown. What is it about? The big questions in which we all go through, I guess, as teenagers. But actually, I grew up in the countryside, and my love of nature was always there. And before I did O levels, some of you won't know what O levels are because I'm so old. However, a sort of GCSE type subject. I went to see my careers officer at school, and I said, somebody manipulates landscape. It doesn't just happen. That's what I want to do. And she said, oh, that's interesting. Go away and come back in a few weeks. So I did, and she came up with landscape architecture. And so I planned all my exams on being able to get to college to do landscape architecture, 5 years full time, never looked back. I kind of drifted into garden design from landscape architecture. So you can imagine if landscape architecture is really about big projects, big infrastructure, perhaps maybe slightly more work done in the urban environment. And I actually lived and grew up in Devon, and there weren't really any jobs for landscape architects in Devon. It was all kind of in urban regeneration.
Okay.
So I took a job in a garden centre just to sort of think about what I was going to do and get to know a few more plants while I was at it. And they said, set up a garden design service, which I did. And I've never looked back. And so uniquely now I work between landscape architecture and garden design. And I feel really lucky because all my life I've been passionate about it. I still am. And, that's good fortune.
Well, it sounds like you had a really helpful teacher.
Yes. Think how my life could have been so different, if I don't know, I could have been sent off to do something which was not appropriate to me, you know. And yeah, it's really, I guess, important to show that you need to listen to young people about where their passions lie and find some opportunities for them to do that.
Help them find that particular route. Yeah. No, that's definitely true. And given that, nobody's asked this, but I think that's a good point. Do you then like inspiring younger generation?
I love it. I love mentoring. I like talking to young people. To see their enthusiasm and their passion come through is fabulous. I mean, it's a privilege actually, I think. Yeah, and I love young people anyway, because I've got all that energy I haven't got anymore. Kind of picks you up and you run with the energy.
It does.
I really like it.
Yes.
And so yeah, I love to be involved in just in the industry in general, but anything I can do to help young people, because there are people are so passionate in horticulture. It's an industry that just really grabs people by the heart.
And potentially you can encourage more women to come into the industry as well.
Yeah, I think that's always important in any industry. And I think, there are a lot of women in the industry. Do we see enough of them at the top of the industry? Probably not. But we all know, well, I'm not going to be political. But it can be tough as a woman, particularly if you have a family and everything. But we welcome as many women and support. They're brilliant because so many women are really empathetic, and I think in many ways the dealing with nature works very well with the feminine.
Yes.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with the guys doing horticulture. They also have their female side, and then so I'm not willing to get into any discussion like that. It's good for everybody.
Of course, it's good for everybody.
But I will, as a woman, always encourage women. Yes. Sure.
Various people have asked designing questions, so let's have some of those. So I don't know who asked this, but they said, I don't have a very big garden. It's pretty much a boring strip with fence panels on either side. What could I do to bring more life to it?
Okay. People often think when they have a small space that there's not really a lot of room, and so you can't put much in it. But actually, fill it with plants. Look at, for inspiration, at a forest. It has a tier up here of trees, maybe small trees, big trees, and then a shrub there, and then a ground layer. But actually, creating volume in a small space makes it feel bigger.
Yes,
that's counterintuitive. You'll think you've stuffed it full of things that will feel smaller, but it is counterintuitive. So you don't want to fill it full of lots of furniture and things like that. But the use of plants to create the different levels of canopy and enclosure will actually transform space and make the space feel really quite large, indefinable, if you like, in terms of the size.
You lose the boundaries.
Absolutely. And, you think of, putting up a shed or something, you put the base down, it's tiny, there's never going to be enough room. But once you get the shed up and the volume in, it looks so much bigger and bigger than you expect. And it's the same with building a garden and creating the volumes of space.
So don't be scared of having things that are high, because that's going to take your eye line up.
Absolutely.
Beyond the space that you've got.
Yes.
Okay, I hope that's helpful for whoever asked that.
Okay.
What are some mistakes people make when designing their gardens? This one's asked.
Well, that's an interesting one, because I think the main mistake is people think that features, it may be like a waterfall or a pot or a cooking area or whatever, or a rockery or whatever, are the main features and they make a garden. Actually, the main feature in a garden is the space you leave behind.
Okay.
That's what you read in a garden and makes you feel comfortable or uncomfortable. So think of it, gives it rhythm, which always gives comfort. And so thinking of it in totality, with the spatial concept of what you're doing, the space you inhabit. If you think about a house, if you have a really nicely proportioned room, you don't really need to do much with it. It feels comfortable and you feel at ease. If it's a rather unfortunately sized room, the proportions aren't all that good, you tend to start putting up pictures and more furniture and putting things in to kind of make up for it. But it actually doesn't really cover it up. It's just distraction. So the spatial quality and the proportion is actually the most important thing to think about.
Okay, so start thinking about that before you even consider going to the garden centre.
Absolutely. Don't think of detail too soon.
Okay, that's good. I've got one more here that I'm going to ask, and then Ryan's got some more from behind the camera, so he will emerge and bring some questions around. So great, thanks everybody for sending in all these really good questions. Very specific one. We have created a Bible garden in a raised bed outside our church. Can you suggest flowers that are bee friendly and could incorporate Psalm 23?
Okay, well, that's a really good question, because these days, talking about nature and encouraging insects and pollinators and bees and all the rest of it is really important for nature and for our environment. So there's a lot of information out there. Rather than give a list, go and do some research. Go to the garden centre. Most plants these days that are on sale have actually a label, and it will say whether it's insect friendly, whether it's specifically good for bees. So actually Google as well. So get involved. So you've got some of your own sense of character in there and choose these plants. But there's a lot of information out there. So go out and get involved. It's incredibly addictive, I warn you. So it's the best thing to do.
It is the best thing to do. I think I've spent a lot of money doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan's handwriting. Interesting. How are you going to convey a sense of peace and refreshment in a place as busy as Chelsea?
That is very difficult to do. That is the challenge, because I think it's by creating a sense of pause. So if you're actually at the showground and you're walking around, it is you can be a bit hot or a bit cold. There's lots of people and people stop in front of you and you can't get in to see the gardens. Overall, it's a great experience, but it can be a little bit trying. So arriving at this garden with that sense of pause, that sense of nature, is what will create, or hopefully will create that. I have done it before. Whether I'll manage to achieve it again is another matter.
You will.
But it's almost indefinable. I can't give you a recipe.
No. We've got masses of questions. I'm going to ask one more from this, and then move on. And it links. Is a mini Psalm 23 garden possible in a small patch?
A mini Psalm 23 garden is possible anywhere. You can do it on your windowsill if you like. So, and it actually, for everybody, there's if it's for you rather than say a community, it's what gives. It's a bit like a piece of music. What is your piece of music that really does this for you? And it's using your eyes and your observation. What is it in the garden? What is it that a plant, the way it grows, or the shape of the plant? Whether it's something on your windowsill, is it growing a vegetable? Is it, everybody has a different response. But the key is being honest with yourself and being observant.
Mm.
Much as you open your ears to music, you open your eyes and your heart to landscape. And I think it's possible anywhere, and it's what it gives to you. You know, it's about individuals and communities. In the same way, when the community comes together, they will talk it through. They'll find out what's important to them, what's important to their community, and it will accommodate a lot of those elements that really will bring the community together.
Absolutely, and that's a really great point, because after the show, what we're hoping will happen is that all of you around the country will be inspired to create community gardens themed on Psalm 23, and our resources are going to go live next month. There are just 4 elements, Sarah, aren't there, out of the garden that hope people will use. So a tree, some water, meadow planting, and somewhere to sit.
Yes.
So anybody can do this. What do you hope will be the benefits of communities coming together and doing it?
Oh, I mean, they're massive. They're absolutely massive. You know, it's such nature and gardening really brings people together and knits communities in a way that very little else does, actually. You know, you see, I've done various community projects in London, which is one of the hardest places to achieve it because it's got such a moving population. And it really works in bringing people together to feel that they've got something in common, something that brings them some peace and some creativity. Yeah, it's the benefits are massive.
Absolutely.
You know, I could do a list that's, you know, goes on forever.
Yes.
And that once people get involved, they know exactly what
the benefits are. Yes, because you stop being lonely. You have a sense of community.
Absolutely. It breaks down isolation.
Yeah,
it's hugely important.
Yes, absolutely. And that's not the only exciting thing, actually, is it? So after the show, the garden is going on to have a permanent life somewhere else. Tell us about that.
Right. Well, it's going to the new hospice in Winchester, and I'm so excited about it. I think for Psalm 23 garden to go to such an important place for people at being cared for and at the end of life is incredibly important. About that, I sort of sends me slightly into being quite a quiet mode. You know, I've lost quite a few people very close to me over the recent years, and that sense of end of life and spirituality and consideration of who we are in our world, and getting both support and relief and a spiritual belonging is really important. And I couldn't think of any place better for this garden to go. And if it gives any comfort at all to anybody, whether it's family or people who are there, patients, then, you know, I'll just fantastic. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
It is, isn't it? Because it's wonderful to do a garden for the Chelsea Flower Show and a global audience, and we really hope everybody will love it. But the fact that it lives on in perpetuity is so special, isn't it?
That is the most special thing. That is really important, and that people can really use it in real life, really enjoy it, and have some benefit from it. You know, that's what it's there for, to help people, to a degree, help people heal.
Yes. And to just stop and pause, like you were saying, in the maelstrom of emotions that they'll be experiencing in that time.
Yeah.
We had a question in linked to that, actually, which was, how do you move a garden? I think that's a really good question, because you don't pick it up and take it and plonk it down. So what's the process?
Well, generally speaking, because of the nature of building an exhibit, we would have, for instance, far too many plants, because we have to plant them very close together to make it look mature. So the sections, you know, the main elements of the plants will all go, all of the plants will go, but not in the huge numbers. So probably the rest will go into other community projects, you know, whatever's required of them. But we take the main elements, we build it in such a way that we can take it apart successfully and transport it. So it will go directly, the main features will go directly from the showground to the construction site, because it's important to us about sustainability, and that we don't do too many, you know,
Definitely.
take it here and then pick it up and take it there and then take it there. So we've considered all that. But it's it's just logistics, really. It's just careful planning and making sure everything gets to the right place, and we put it back together.
Fantastic. So we've got less than 3 months to go to the show. Yes. Sorry to mention that. How are you feeling?
Oh, excited. You know, it starts as soon as spring is springing, I start to get excited. If you go out in the countryside, once the rape starts flowering, then I'm beginning to panic, because you know there are certain associations which will stay a lifetime for me as to the signals of where we are in the Chelsea process. So yeah, no, excitement. It's actually the excitement that builds.
Yes, great. That's brilliant. Thank you, Sarah.
No, thank you, Hazel.
Thank you, everybody, for asking such great questions. We hope that you found that fascinating. I know I did. It's been really interesting to have an insight into the great mind that is putting together this beautiful design, and we hope that when you see it on television, read about it in the papers, or actually come and visit us at the show, that you'll really love this particular program. You can follow us on social media, and do tell us when you do your community gardens. Tell us what you're doing, because we would love to hear all about that. So thank you for joining us today. Stay safe and well and dry, and we will see you at the Chelsea Flash Show. Bye-bye.
Bye.